Grits. Let's make some pasta.
Pasta.
All right. What body part does this remind you of? You'll never guess.
A belly button.
That's a howdy. Actually, so orecchiette is Italian for little ear, so it's like your earlobe.
That ain't no earlobe.
Some people's earlobes look like that.
You need to go see a doctor if your earlobe looks like
That's
that.
exactly what your earlobes look like. Okay. Oops. Put it in there. It's just gonna plummet. And then you cover it. So now we have to blanch our broccoli raab and our broccolini.
Love to blanch. My favorite golden girl.
Yes. I'm a rose man myself, but I'll settle for blanch. And I'm actually gonna repurpose this water. You're just gonna do a little dice. Damn, that's pretty good.
Why are you so extra? You know, you walk in somebody's house and you smell this, it's like, oh, you've been cooking.
This is like the base. Any dish that starts with onions and garlic is good with me. And so you wanna let this brown a little bit.
Let color be your guide.
Let color be your guide. That sounds like a great book.
It does, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Couple sprinkles on this.
Go with this.
Wow, that smells so good.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
You wanted to talk about Bo?
Yes.
Managing costs with a kid.
Yeah.
What number is in your head? Because I know you've seen articles out there. I think I found a stat, but I don't think I shared it with you. There's all these articles that say it costs X amount of dollars to raise a kid. Like,
Yeah, from like 0 to 18.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're all different. It's like, you know, they include extracurricular activities, or some
Yeah.
people factor in like the cost of healthcare.
Yep.
And I think when you hear that number, like I remember, you know, like being like in my 20s and you hear that number, it's like, yeah, that is, oh my God, like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's, what is it? Protection right there. That's the reason right there.
Oh, birth control?
That's birth control right there. You can't even wrap your head around that. And even if you broke it up over, like, to your point, 20 years, it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
Would you say?
And it's not broken up evenly over 20 years. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot that you have to front load, and then it might taper off depending on whether you need after school care or extracurriculars. Like it's not a linear number, which is what makes it even harder, because our paychecks and our salaries, if you work a traditional job, are very much like stagnant.
Right. I can see how it just adds like so much pressure to the decision. But I actually don't think a lot of people really think about the money before they have a kid. Like they just kind of say, it is what it is. Yeah. It's gonna be expensive, but I wanna have kids and we'll figure it out, and I'll get a promotion or whatever, and then it will all be taken care of.
That was definitely the trend, I would say 10 years ago. I was one of those people that was naive. I wasn't researching the cost of having a child when thinking about having children. I had already decided I was gonna have them eventually. But now I have like a significant group of girlfriends that have purposely, intentionally decided that they're not going to have children until or unless something changes. And they're thriving.
So you're saying they've made a decision not to have children because they acknowledge how expensive it could be?
It's not just the cost of having children, that's one part, but a lot of these women, you know, I'm 35, so they're in their professional careers, and they know that once you have a child, your likelihood to continue to make as much money and continue to get promoted kind of diminishes. And when you look at the mortality rate of women of color when they have babies, that's a very scary thing. And they're just, them and their partners have decided that if they're gonna have children, they're either gonna do it non-traditionally, or they're just not gonna have them until something changes.
Yeah.
Al dente.
Al dente. You know what that means?
Firm, but not too firm.
Yes. I think it means to the tooth.
Really?
Yeah.
That makes sense. Dente, dentist, dental.
Any other dents?
Dentistry.
Mrs. Wordsmith.
Yeah, I honestly did not think about it until I was pregnant. Like, to me, treating kids like a piece of real estate where you try and figure out like the appreciating value and how much it's all gonna cost just kind of ruined the experience for me. Like, they're not assets, like in the financial sense. They are emotional assets, but like I wanted to think about their humanity, my dreams for them, like who they're gonna be as little people and what they're gonna contribute to society. I just didn't wanna, and I know I'm a bit Pollyanna about that stuff, but
just a little bit.
It wasn't until I was actually pregnant that I started paying attention, like in open enrollment, like, oh, does this cover, maternal care and delivery?
So what was, because I do remember some of the conversations we were having, and obviously some of these things we could control, some things we couldn't, but was there a part that was, did you have or experience sticker shock? Like, I remember when I experienced sticker shock was just in the birth process, like looking at the difference between like a natural birth and, let's say, a C-section.
Yeah.
Like, it was like 3X. Like, I felt like I was looking at in-state or out-of-state tuition. It was like, oh my God, like that, it's, because for me, I'm a money nerd, so it's like, oh my God, like in a world where, 40-50% of people don't have $1,000 or couldn't cover that in cash. How in the world are people even able to afford having a kid? Like, not even talking like after birth, like just getting to birth.
Well, I'll tell you how they pay a higher premium on their health insurance. They assume that because you're paying $1,000 a month instead of $250 a month, that's gonna cover that bill. It's bill insurance instead of like health insurance, because it covers a larger portion, but you're really just prepaying. Like, you're not.
But even still, you still get these bills, right? Because remember, even afterwards, we thought, all right, we're good. And then 30 days later, you get one little bill. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense.
And it came in his name. I was like, how this motherfucker getting bills?
Like, Bo got a bill.
Yeah, he's 8 weeks old. How he got a bill coming into this house?
Right, not to the parents of. It was straight to him.
No, it was straight to him. He was the patient.
Yeah, and
it's like the nerve of him to need a diaper and Tylenol after coming through a vaginal canal. Like,
and oh my gosh, I'm having flashbacks. Yeah, we had to go back. Because remember,
he needed additional surgery.
And so we had to go back a couple months later, and then even that led to like a second trail of more bills and more bills, and they just kept rolling in. And I remember thinking, like, I was so grateful that we'd done all the work that we did prior to 2017. But we had an HSA and we were debt free. Like, we had done all the work, and I just remember thinking, like, oh my God, like, gosh, because we know people. I remember those days. You get a car note, or you need new tires, and this sets you back a couple months. Like, you got to figure out some things. And with the kid, it was like every month it was another.
You couldn't plan if you wanted to. Like, it was one of the first illustrations of how jacked up our healthcare system is, because, like, to your point, we were trying to do this comparison shopping. It sounds like you're buying a car, but like we're trying to, but we're not. You're having a baby. Like,
no, but you're depending on your medical plan. Like, you are comparison shopping
between hospitals. Hospitals can charge you one thing for one birth, and then 8 miles down the road, it's $2,000 more because that one is in a ritzier part of town, and the rooms have premium cable instead of regular cable. Like, it's a completely opaque process. And the challenge is, like, it's not like comparison shopping in the sense of Amazon, where you can go to a hospital's website and look up, like, how much does a birth cost? These prices are not displayed anywhere. You gotta call, and luckily, like, the FIRE community, like, you can search the message boards and learn how people found out the prices before they committed to a hospital.
Still in the stomach, raising hell.
In the hospital, they'll ask you, do you want additional pain meds, or do you want, you know, if you happen to have an infection or anything that requires additional treatment,
Oh yeah.
each Tylenol is $80. And so when you're taking 800 milligrams every 4 hours because you just gave birth, it's like every time they bring you that little pill thing, it's, you know, $300 on your bill.
And you got the nerve to have shitty food on top of it.
I know, which is
Paying
included.
all this money, and I remember sleeping on a mattress that was no thicker than this napkin.
Yeah.
And I slept there because, like, you know, where else are you gonna go?
I said if I had another one, I would look outside of a traditional hospital and go to a birthing center or explore home births, which are significantly cheaper.
Yeah. And then this is where a lot of people get it wrong. They don't cool their pasta enough, so they may put it like in a bowl and it's just stacked. But like there's a lot of heat still trapped in there. It's a little extra step, but it prevents you from having like really gummy pasta.
She's submerged, she's changing colors. She's a happy little broccolini.
And that's it. Well, do you remember some of the things that we did to save money?
Yep. I think the biggest thing was once we got married, we both opened HSAs, which helped us sort of set aside money. We didn't actually end up pulling from the HSAs to reimburse ourselves for the birth, but it was nice to have that cushion there where if we got an unexpected bill, we could pull out money.
Yeah.
What did we do for the baby shower? It's very specific.
I think we took the advice and said we just wanted like
Yeah, we just registered
diapers.
for the things that we knew that he would need.
Like the toys and stuff. It was like
no toys, no real like
supplies.
Yeah,
Need some
supplies.
Wipes.
And even those,
diapers.
like, there was a lot of supplies that we bought that we just didn't end up using. And I started to realize after he was here and it was, 3 a.m. scrolling while feeding him, like how much the industry of mommying and parenting is just,
it's vicious.
It's damn near predatory. Where it's like the phone knows, the algorithm knows exactly what problem you're having, and they're gonna throw any solution at you to solve that problem. And all it takes is like a call to grandma, and she's like, "Oh, you don't need all that. You just need, cornstarch and Vaseline, and that'll knock it right on out." But when you're online, like you're seeing like this Hashitashi cream and like this thing that promises to never make them have gas, and like this other thing that rocks them in a way that their acid reflux doesn't, like it's just the marketing behind parenting is just as aggressive as the
flashbacks.
the process.
I remember even the doctor. The doctor came in, quick little 5-second, they got this, nurse, let's write in some such and such. And we put on, what was it, vitamin D drops or something like that? Yeah. Remember? They said the test came back or whatever. I just wanted to make sure, prescribe the vitamin D. And it wasn't expensive, but it made him really irritable. Yeah. Right? Like he went from being like just
it gave him gas.
Sweet little, like funky chemical medicinal gas. That and the formula. Remember the formula gas?
Yeah, the formula
Oh
was bad.
my God, I had no idea. I remember checking to see if I had like left the pilot on the gas or something. Cause it lingered for like 15 minutes. And I was like, what kind of fart? Like this just can't be, that's not gas. That's not human gas. That's gotta be like Georgia natural gas. Like, I don't know what that is, but that can't be life. And sure enough, as soon as we made the decision, and that was such an important moment because I think it was one of the first decisions that I think we had where it was like, you know what? Let's have confidence as parents to say, I know the doctor said, but I know my son. Yeah. And that was only a couple weeks, but it was like, no, we're not gonna do this anymore. And he was fine.
Well, that was the most critical part for me in early motherhood was acknowledging that doctors are at work too. And just like I'm at work and I don't give every transaction my all, like I was able to be like, maybe when they advised this, they didn't actually hear what I said. Mm-hmm. Or maybe when they said this is just their standard default, and unless I gave them other instructions, this is what they tell everybody. Mm-hmm. Like it goes back to advocating and patient advocacy, which I wish I had spent more time on before I had the baby. But like, once I realized that doctor is just at work. Yes, he's an expert, not saying that doctors and scientists and experts don't have expertise, but it is 100% possible that the experience with this particular product, whether it's the brand or the product itself, doesn't work for my child. What's the secret to not crying?
Having a really sharp knife. When your knife is not sharp, you're actually spritzing a bunch of this acid. I forget what kind of acid it is.
Onion juice.
Onion juice. We need the star of the show. Actually, I would say the co-star of the show. To me, the star of the show is the rapini. The co-star of the show is sausage. We need to split the sausage and take it out of its casing. So we're actually not gonna cook the sausage whole like this. One of the things I was super excited about was like making this food. I couldn't wait until he was able to eat salads, because I was like, this is my jam. Like, I can't wait. And it's worked. Like, he's been eating, all kinds of fruits and vegetables since he was a newborn. And
it was probably 20 weeks, because at that point I had stopped breastfeeding. I didn't make it very long on the breastfeeding journey. It was a lot. And he was consuming, 40, 45 ounces of formula every day. I mean, it was just a massive amount of formula every single day.
It was way above the norm.
It was way above the norm, and he was still hungry.
Yeah.
And so it was a decision to go ahead and give him some solids.
I remember, oh my gosh, that seems so long ago.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I rember tasting baby food, because that was part of, I think at the job, it was like, oh, we're gonna do, I'd never been to a, first time father. And they make you taste all the baby foods, and it made up my mind, because I was tasting things, and listen, I've been cooking professionally for years. I can identify different flavors, and it was like, tell me what this is, and I was like, it's unidentifiable. Like, there's not a receptor in my brain that is lighting up right now. I don't know what this is.
It's like, it's pear.
It's orange is what it is. This one's beige. That's it. And it was like, that's macaroni and cheese. And I was like, you have got to be shitting me. Like, that is, I even now, I can't describe it. And it was like, well, this one's butternut squash. And then I was like, why is this so hard? Like, why are they making this so hard? Like, and I just started making his own stuff. And it was like, does he light up? Does he want more?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. Okay, here we go. Whoa.
And I just remember it was so fun. I was mixing and matching and making things. And
he loves food.
And actually, he would be sitting right there, watching me. So it's great now, because he loves to cook, and I think it's partially because he's seen me cooking.
Yeah.
It makes sense. He's been watching me cook and smelling it, his entire life.
I think it's interesting that you say that you got to notice that, because one of the problems with our current system today is that parents don't get to spend a lot of time with their children to notice those things.
Don't get me started.
The time you have with them is usually reserved to like in the morning, and that's the morning chaos of like breakfast, clothes, wash your face, get in the car, drop off, and then there's the pickup, wind down, dinner time, like after work, bath, that kind of thing. Like the middle period where you can actually serve them new things, note what their reaction was, and like taste it. Not taste it, but like see it.
No, taste it sometimes too.
Yeah, I tasted all of his food.
I know,
like I'm
pissed me off.
Very proud.
I had to make so much more food. I was like, I know I made 4 portions.
I wasn't eating portions. I'm just saying I tasted it to know that whether what flavors he liked. How would you know if you didn't taste it?
Yeah.
Anyway, my point was a lot of that observing and learning is outsourced.
Yeah.
From the minute they're 6 weeks old or 12 weeks old, in our case, you're basically handing your baby to somebody else. Correct. And you go back to work. Motherhood changed the psychological safety that I have around work. So pretty.
It is, isn't it? It smells amazing. Like you can add like handfuls of the orecchiette. Perfect. So I want to be there I want to support you and I want to be there for my son, but I have to use all of my vacation time,
Yes.
all of my personal time. And then on top of that, to your point, my boss, the only reason why he did it is because he was like, look, I'm a new father too, and somebody did it for me.
Exactly.
Like my boss, when I had a kid, gave me a week under the table, like, don't say anything.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do the same for you,
Yeah.
and let's pay it forward. And I'm like, dang. So I stitched together 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And I wanna say the 5th week was more like work from home, but it's really, you're catching up from the last 4 weeks that you were out at work. And it was crazy to me. And I was like, man, this is not good for healthy families
No,
at
it's
all.
terrible.
Like, this is not how you start.
It's
Like,
terrible.
you wanna know why people are losing it, and all of us, like, you can't expect
terrible.
people to come back to work and all of a sudden snap back. No one is in their right frame of mind right now. You're still healing physically, first of all.
Physically, yeah.
And it was just crazy to me that was the case. But again, these are the norms that we have fundamentally
I know, and I see
accepted.
mothers defending it all the time. Like I
Really?
see mothers, yes. And it's the ruse of capitalism, where it's like when you're so oppressed, you start to normalize what your rights are and aren't. And in the US, it's like, this is a human right to be able to bring another human into the world, onboard them into your family, into society, and then go back to work after you're well rested, after their brain has fully developed. I stayed out for 12 weeks, but that's only because we could. 6 of those weeks were
And that was
fully
stitched together.
It was 6 of those weeks were fully paid from short-term disability and like the company policy. 3 of those weeks were done at like 60% of pay, and then another 3 were completely unpaid. And we're very fortunate that we were in a financial situation to do that. But like a lot of people go back after 4 or 6 weeks. And at that point, you remember week 6, like the baby is just waking up, like they're starting to realize that they are here to stay. They're not going back in the womb. And it's a very difficult period. And so I went back to work before he was sleeping through the night, before my body had fully healed. There is no support system other than the individual generosity of people. There's no like system-wide support system from either government or company that like leads you through that transition. And that just seems so backwards.
That was a huge contributor for me to leaving the job. And,
Yeah.
and it had to come in phases, because I had to break up with this old identity. Like, if when I would explain who I was, there was all this like career language to describe who I was. I mean, down to my core identity. My father worked for this company before, and now I work for this company. And I was so proud of that language and that story, that narrative that I was telling myself. And then after I had a kid, when they say they force you to put things in perspective, and because of the journey to financial independence that we've been on, it was like, wait a second, if you say this is who you are and who you want to be, help me understand why 80 to 90% of your time is going to help make this corporation richer, right? Like, that to me is a disconnect. And I couldn't understand it until things got really, really tough at work. And then I was like, okay, why am I dealing with this? Like, this does not make any sense. Like, I had the benefit of being able to say, actually, I don't need this money and I don't need this bullshit.
Yeah, I remember being jealous of you when you quit. And not necessarily of you personally, but of the relationship you were building with Bo and like, even his teachers, where you were doing all the drop-offs and the pickups because I was working and traveling and all that jazz. And so you had like a completely different relationship with how his days went and what he was into and not into. And I remember feeling inadequate as a mom because I didn't have the same intuition about those things. I did about a lot of things that never goes away, but like there were just aspects where I felt very uncomfortable offloading that to you as the father. And I don't know, I always ask myself like, okay, well, is this like, some hidden patriarchal bullshit that you haven't dealt with? Like, me, I like to woo-woo and journal and figure out my shit. But like,
I hadn't dealt with?
no, that I hadn't dealt with, where it's like, why am I feeling this way about Julien knowing his son? Would I feel this way if it were a nanny or a teacher who knew him differently or a grandmother who knew him differently? And when I did that work, it was like, yeah, there is an aspect of motherhood that I have to relearn now that there is a very active father in the picture. And that's not to say that my father wasn't active or that he wasn't there. He was there 100%, but he was playing the role of provider, and like we saw him when he got home from work and like we ran to the door. You know how Carl Winslow comes in and like you hear the applause and Harriet's like, "Hey Carl." Like that was my childhood where it's like, Daddy's home. And I needed to learn how to create space for that. And then to use that space, not like wallowing in guilt, but like for self-care to aid in my own healing. Yeah.
Go sit down somewhere.
Really, by his second birthday, it had started to like clear up where it's like, when Julien has Bo, this is a safe thing. Like I don't need to think about, I don't need to be over his shoulders. I don't need to be telling him what to do. This is the time where I go back and kind of reclaim some of that time that culture took from me that I'd spent at work.
I had to kick you out the room a couple times.
You did have to kick me out. I don't appreciate that shit either.
You're welcome though.
To be clear.
You're welcome though.
This way.
Counterclockwise and then shake this the other direction. If you can. Watch me. Look. Just shake. Don't worry about it. Ready?
Yeah.
Go ahead and add a little bit more water.
A ladle full?
Yeah, that's fine. And keep on stirring. That's perfect, babe. So we added the parm, and now I'm gonna add the Romano. Oh, that smells so good. It's hard not to think about or talk about work because, to your point, there were certain things that could not be done if you build a life that is centered around work. You know what I mean? Like, I remember taking a day, because I remember I was working, I was doing all this stuff, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna take a day. You know what I mean? Because I'm still so work obsessed. And I was like, I'm gonna take a day and we're gonna go to this water park. I found this place. And we go to this water park and he's running around. And I remember thinking, this is the happiest day of his life.
Yeah.
Like I took hundreds of pictures that day. I was with my mom, it was just us two. And he's running around and it was the happiest I'd ever seen him.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, and I'm gonna show you the pictures, like, oh my God, this great picture.
You literally described it as the happiest
I think I texted you before you even got home.
It was heartbreaking.
I didn't think about that. It's only because I wasn't at work that I was able to experience this day with him. There are a lot of men who their primary motivation to pursuing financial independence is that they want to be the fathers that they always imagined.
I definitely see very active fathers within our community and not just with their boys.
Yeah.
Like it's very refreshing to see dads doing stuff with their girls, with their daughters.
Yeah.
Being girl dads, which is nice to see.
That to me is one of the bigger cultural shifts that I think is playing a role in even outside of financial independence. But it's this idea that fathers or men are stepping up. More men, I think, than ever before are stepping up and wanting to play more active roles in their children's life. And I think that has really far-reaching implications. I'm really happy. I'm happy to see it, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think it's the first step in healing that a lot of families need. It's the ability to participate in parenting without worrying about doing it perfectly.
Yeah.
Like, no one is a perfect parent, but when you see your child react to something that you try to do, or just show you appreciation, or acknowledge that they miss you, like there's something there that just keeps you going the next day and the next day and the next day. Especially now where, you know, we're all practically full-time parents with a lot of the resources that we were using to help supplement. So, no, when I think about my vision for a financially independent kid, I just think about like how intimate our relationship can be, in the sense that he doesn't just see me as his mother. He doesn't just see me as a parent. It's really important for him to acknowledge that I'm a whole person, I was a whole person before him. I'm gonna be a whole person after him. And like, as he grows up, I want him to understand that I have interests that don't revolve around him. I have friendships that don't revolve around him. And that gets really exciting because it allows us to continue to be curious about each other. He should feel that I'm not giving him the same standard lines and the same like regurgitated conversation when he comes over for dinner every Sunday night, because that's what he's gonna do. When he's adult, he's never gonna get tired of coming over to hang out with mom. And I want him to know that he comes from a village, and I wanna tell him like, this person did this thing for you. Leah used to bring in the clothes from her boys when they grew out of it. Your grandma used to come and pick you up from school and bring you peaches. Your aunt used to send you bubbles in the mail all the way from Texas. Your cousin used to come and make sure you knew how to properly handle the football. Like, these are all things that we don't necessarily teach him because that's not within our routine, but like, this village made him who he is. And I want to make sure that he, you know, gives that energy back to the world, that he's kind and generous, and that if he has extra, he's as willing to part with it as so many other people were. Like, he doesn't feel the need to hoard.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking about his favorite toy, his favorite truck. A lot of his favorite stuff, you know, came from people that were not his parents, you know, came from the village. And some of them are, what do you call it, gently loved or gently used?
Previously loved.
Well, yeah, I mean, several of his favorite things.
Yeah, he rarely gets new toys. A lot of it is just stuff that, you know, another kid has finally grown out of. And it's like, well, it's already been tried and tested. Like, if it lasted that long in your house, it's gonna last another 2 years in mine.
Yeah, you just wipe it down. and now he has the benefit to pass that off, you know? Like, and I want to teach him that for sure.
And we do, to Sydney.
Yeah, like, all right, now, are you done with it? You say goodbye to this thing, and we're gonna give it to your baby cousin.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's encouraging.
Yeah. Well, cheers to that.
That's mine.
Cheers to
It's
that.
gonna be hot and backwashy. You're not even gonna like it.
I'll drink your backwash any day.